Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome to Work Song, where we will discuss the impact of the crisis on artists, managers, labels, technicians, organizers, everybody in the chain of production in the jazz industry, and see if we can find out what everybody's experience is individually, hopefully come up with some constructive ideas.
See if we can come up with some constructive ideas. Uh-oh. Kevin, you're muted again. So, hey.
Oops. Yep.
Yeah, there you are.
Okay, so cool. So I'm just going to introduce everybody quickly. Katherine McVicker, an international agent for many years, greatly experienced, worked in Europe and America and the Americas. Welcome, Katherine.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
Great to have you here.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Thank you, Katherine. Annamaija Saarela, CEO of Livelab in Tampere and Helsinki, also a greatly experienced international person in the jazz industry for many years. Welcome, Annamaija.
Thank you. And to be correct, I'm the CEO of Tampere Livelab, not Helsinki. We have two venues, and okay. I'm the other one, not the other one. Not the other. But anyway,
cool. Well, maybe you'll be the CEO of the other one as well one day. Mike Bindraban of the Good Music Company, an international agent and lawyer as well for many years. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Hello.
And Edin Zubcevic, artistic director of the Sarajevo Jazz Festival. Welcome, Edin.
Thank you. Hi.
Great. Let's kick off, everybody, by just talking a little bit about your own experiences, because you're all from different countries, of, I suppose, the moment when the coronavirus crisis really hit and you thought to yourself, right, okay, there's something fundamental which is changing here, and we're going to have to deal with it. Can you just take us back to that moment when you thought, right, this is very serious, and there's a threat here to the industry, and how you were reacting as a professional? Would you like to start, Katherine?
Sure. I mean, I have a very distinct memory of, I believe it was the 3rd or 4th of March, and we started to lose some shows. Of course, we knew about the coronavirus because it had been in the American news for a while, but that over the period of maybe 2 or 3 days, we lost something like 80 shows. So I was absolutely shocked. I also had an artist who was supposed to start a 3-week tour and actually got to the point where she and her band were driving to the airport to get on the plane. And I had to call the road manager and say, don't go. The show's canceled. I don't think she should go. So that those two events, losing a whole bunch of shows, is kind of like the stock market crashing, when all of a sudden you say, wow, I just lost all my shows for the rest of the spring. I think that was the moment that I knew something was really seriously wrong, for sure.
Okay. An interesting point there, Katherine, about the kind of extent, the magnitude of it, the fact that you compare it to the stock market crashing. We'll come back to that. I think this idea of exactly how enormous it was is very important. Mike, do you want to go next?
You're muted, Mike.
I'm sorry. No, it's a bit similar, like what Katherine just said. I think we noticed something was up earlier in the year, right after we visited New York at Winter Jazz Festival when we came back to Europe, and then a few shows in some shows in Asia started to get canceled, and then it came over to Italy, and we had to like cancel and move shows over there. Same in Switzerland, and this was late February. And I remember my business partner and good colleague Jurjen. He had his very big cycling trip planned to go to Italy, and we were kind of debating at the office and kind of discussing like, should we go? Should we not go? Is it dangerous? Is it not dangerous? And we were all a bit, of course we were wary, but, we didn't really think that it would turn out to be this serious. So, we were moving shows, but also anticipating that it was not going to be that bad. And then when it started to spread to Switzerland, France, Germany, then we really sort of got serious and tried to be before the ball and moved kind of all the shows to like late May and June. Like everything, because we didn't see this really working out really well, and then before you knew it, we started to move all the shows to now 2021 actually. Yeah. Right.
So you've basically written off the rest of this year. You're not doing anything more for 2020. You're just thinking of 21 now.
We do have a few small tours and small routable shows left in the fall, but the big chunks are all in 2021, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike. Annamaija, can you share your experience of what it was like in Finland?
Yeah, I think the first sign for me was the cancellation of ITB Berlin. That is the big tourism conference in Berlin, and they informed us that they are cancelled on 28th of February. And at that point, I was traveling in UK with my daughter. We had a holiday week, winter holiday week, and we spent it in UK. And but at this point, I didn't realize that it will affect so strongly up here. But so everything happened very quickly after that. On 12th of March, our government informed us that all the shows must be cancelled, and meetings, more than 500 people should have cancelled. So we decided also close down our place. So our last gig was on 12th of March, and as everybody, we had to cancel or reschedule all the shows. We had 50 shows scheduled and announced for the spring, so we have to cancel or reschedule all of them. But on the other hand, in Finland, the situation at the moment is almost back to normal, because we opened up our venue again last week. So we, of course, only with Finnish domestic bands, but anyway, the shows are going on again in Finland.
Okay, that's a very interesting point, Annamaija, the fact that you actually have a venue that's up and running. I'll come back to you very shortly, because I'm very interested to know what the experience of maybe audiences might be during the pandemic. Lastly, to round off, Edin, tell me about what it's been like in Sarajevo.
Actually, when I was in Sarajevo during the lockdown, I figured out that there's a festival which I also work with Bogdan in Ljubljana, which is happening in June. We already started selling the tickets. Program was announced months earlier, and all around the Europe, we just received the information about cancellation this, somebody canceling that, and it's all about cancellation. And we figured it out that in June, probably we had no idea what's going to be, but we realized that we don't want to cancel anything. Yeah, that's our like a first decision and reaction on the crisis, because we realized that the world is cancelled in a way that nothing is up to us anymore, and we of course respond on the fact that we have in the program a lot of Slovenian bands, so meaning that we were able to kind of recreate original format in some kind of level which can be still possible, and so we start to work on many different levels how we can have a festival without in a situation with nobody can travel and people cannot get together, and obvious idea to check possibilities with the streaming, etc. But we kind of wanted to have exact the program, meaning that we're presenting improvised musicians, in improvised music, and that's not something you can do on Zoom using the Zoom application in real time. So and we really wanted to have high quality performance presented, not just have a band playing somewhere and trying to fight and cope internet connection or latency or something like that. It's going to be crazy. So we decided to also offer the musicians from Slovenia to have fully paid gigs. Doesn't matter what kind of the gig is going to be, but that they know they're going to be paid, because we were aware that nobody's going to get paid for 3 months. And if you want to do something really for the community and for the festival and for the musicians, it's a very obvious thing what you should do. And since this is a public funded institution, we have not just responsibility, but it becomes kind of duty that to respond in that direction, so that we can support the musicians and also to find a way how to support musicians overseas and from the rest of the Europe, because we have a program which is presenting musicians from all over the place and from every corner actually. And so we try to work on format, and we change, I believe, 3 times since the original idea came up. We had, like, in March, we're going to do a premiere streaming with pre-production materials with the musicians, etc. And then we have restrictions changed meanwhile. So we figured it out, we're going to have some live shows as well. So let's recreate the program again and adapt to that new piece of information. And then we have a open air venue, which is in a park next to the Zankarev Dome as a center. And so we figured it out that that's also a possibility. It's kind of platform in this situation that we can use differently than before. Anyways, that was the one part of my.
So you've basically been. So you've basically been
in order to
adapting
react
to
immediately. Thing is that we didn't have time to think. We have to do something or cancel, or because we were approaching the 60 days before the show, and this is like legally, because we already have deals with the musicians. So we're trying to find a way to stand for what we originally wanted to present as a program, and not the canceling, which is really a big challenge to be precise. How to really make a festival without musicians able to come, to be there, and audience as well.
Let me just pick up on that, because Edin, you're telling us about your response and how you were being proactive, how you were dealing with the situation, adapting to circumstances. Can everybody else come in on that as well? Obviously, Katherine, you made that strong statement about the magnitude of the crisis, just how big it was, almost being like the stock market crashing. So once you go through that kind of that traumatic event, the question is, what do you do? What steps do you take? How can you try and cope with it? So can you share some of your insights into your experience of what you guys actually did to try and deal with it?
Well, if you're asking me, about, if you're asking me about what we did, there's two other points I should make. One point, which I think is really important, is first of all, how quickly this all happened, which Annamaija already brought up. But the other thing is that our government has really failed in dealing with this situation with good leadership and with good information. I don't want to get into the politics of the United States, which is a mess right now. But one of the things is that the Americans, myself included, in the early stages kept thinking, oh, if it can only get better in Europe, we can still tour. Right. And after a little bit, I said to myself, you know what? It's not about Europe. It's about everybody being healthy, because what government in their right mind is going to allow their borders to open to people who are still carrying this virus? So it really became a much larger global issue. So what we've done is when the cancellations first happened, especially for the summer festivals, because at every stage I kept thinking, well, as long as we don't lose the summer, well, as long as we don't lose the fall, because we have 10 people that work for us. So I have a lot of people that I have to take care of. So our company immediately, to save the company, immediately applied for every single government program and loan program that we could get into. And we qualified for all of them. The one that everybody wants to get, which is called the Payment Protection Plan, I turned down, because the way it was structured initially is you had to put everybody back to work immediately and full time, and it would only last for 8 weeks. Well, if we have no shows, I don't have work for people to do. So it really wasn't going to be helpful to us. But we did take the loan. So we got the company stabilized in that way. Everybody went on unemployment, and the government had made a special plan that self-employed people could get unemployment for the first time, like ever. So that's been helpful for the company. In terms of what we've done with the artists and with the tours is certainly, as Mike has pointed out, when the things started like falling apart, it was a big rush to reschedule shows. But after about maybe 2 weeks, it really slowed down, because there's no certainty about when it's going to be safe to travel. Yeah. So we started, of course, focusing on 21 and 2022 season and next summer. But the other thing we've done is we've taken time to focus on other things. We have some cultural arts networks that we've developed, one in Africa and one that we're doing in Latin America. So we've had time to work on building on those cultural arts networks, which has been something I normally wouldn't have that much time to give to. So that's another thing that we've done, where we're trying to continue to stay in touch with people and to also try to expand the business that we're doing, so that when we get on the other side of this, we'll have more sustainable models.
Great. Thanks, Katherine.
Yeah.
Mike, you said that you had kind of cancelled stuff for the rest of the year. You were thinking of 2021. Can you tell me about some of the other steps that you've taken, or the things that you've been doing to try to cope with the situation? Maybe not thinking about gigs, being proactive in some way.
Well, you have to be proactive. I mean, if you're losing this amount of business and there's so much uncertainty in the air, I mean, people need to realize that the position of us, same with Katherine and myself as international agents, that we're not only dependent on the infrastructure from promoter side, we're also dependent on travel infrastructure. We're dependent on so many moving parts that it's very insecure, and that you need to anticipate, and just it's like a chess game. You need to be ahead of the game every time again, and especially in the period March up to May, things were changing so fast and so often that you needed to anticipate almost daily to certain changes. And then again, it's also another thing that for the European Union, even though that health laws and health regulations and taking steps concerning public health is not an issue from the European Union. It's still an issue for the member states. So that meant very practically that every country was taking their own steps concerning governmental measures against this whole coronavirus thing. So that impacted tours, for example, which we could have kept or maybe not could have kept. it made the uncertainty almost greater because, Spain and Italy were totally a mess. But then again, Scandinavia was still kind of sort of open.
Right.
So it was a very strange development. And then the UK was kind of late behind the ball as well. And, the feeling I was getting from promoters over there was very much that, they're still open, like, no, let's keep the fall. Let's put it over there. And I think Katherine would be thinking the same. We as agents, we didn't really have the confidence that was going to happen, So it was a constant discussion with either promoters from countries who were not very well informed, but same with managers and artist managers who were just not well informed or just kept staying positive to somehow to make tours happen. So, it's a matter of anticipating. It's a matter of postponing your gigs. It's a lot of legal discussions you're having with promoters. There's the force majeure. The government takes measures, so there's a force majeure situation, and then of course there's the question like, all right, so who's liable for the expenses? Who's liable for the artist expenses? And do you want to cancel the show or can we move the show? Sometimes you have to move the show two or three times. I mean, that's one element, and another element which is very much in play here in the Netherlands and the Benelux is the voucher system. The government introduced a voucher system in which the ticket buyer can either choose to get their money back, choose a voucher for a similar show from that concert promoter or venue, or keep the ticket for the postponed show, just to make sure that there's enough cash flow with the concert promoters and the venues to keep them alive. There's a lot to be said about that because the artist is not seeing any money from that. So it's I don't know. It was very interesting. Let's keep it that way.
Annamaija, because you told us that your venue is open again. What about in that period when it was closed? How did you get through it?
First of all, our venue is owned by Musicians Union, Finnish Musicians Union, and in the very beginning of the lockdown, we decided already that we will reopen as soon as possible because we really want to support artists and the whole community, artist community and whole events community. But of course, it wasn't possible to keep our place open because it was prohibited. But anyway, we canceled the gigs only for a month ahead because we wanted to keep all the possible events that we could in our calendar, and that's why we then could announce our spring program, our summer program very soon after our government decided to let us open again. So we opened last Monday, and the first gig was on Wednesday, the 3rd of June. And now we have announced some 22 concerts for the summer period, and the feedback from the audience has been very good. They are very happy to have live music again. But of course, as Mike said, we have the same system. We offered vouchers for the audience to get a voucher to get ticket to another show later, or they could get their money back, or they just could keep the ticket for the postponed show. But we couldn't deliver this money to the artists because there's a lot of costs when you are running a venue. There's a lot of costs that you have to do anyway, your rents and electricity and salaries and everything. So you have to take care of everything, and there's no other income because you are closed down. But our government has been quite generous regarding grants and support for companies, and we got a quite nice grant from Business Finland to create live stream facilities in our venue, and other like new business models that we can take to us, because I think this is not, I mean, everything, we are going to go to a new normal. It's not going to be the same as it was before the lockdown. Never ever again. We have to find new ways to run this business.
I agree.
Okay.
That's obvious.
I think that will definitely surface in the final part of the conversation. You mentioned live streaming, Annamaija. Obviously, that's a key theme of what everybody's been going through in the industry in the last few months. Live streaming has been a very, very important, very regular occurrence. There have been some great things that I've seen, and lots of people have been very excited by that. But how does it actually work, do you think, for the musicians? I mean, what about the benefits or the possible economic gain for them? I mean, can they make any money from live streaming? Can it help them to sustain careers, or is it just a question of them maintaining their profiles? So whoever wants
to
come
start?
in on that. Yeah, go ahead.
It can never replace live shows, never ever. I mean, in jazz field, it can never replace live shows, but it can be something extra. It's, I mean, in the situation we are right now, we have limited capacity because we can sell only 50% of the capacity we normally have. And there's, of course, people who don't want to go to live shows for a long time because they have their risks of getting the virus, and there's many reasons why they can't come for live shows. So streaming can be extra. And when it comes to income for the musicians, we pay at least 183 euros per musician for the streaming. So they have some, like, they will get the basic salary out of it, and the tickets for the streaming is €9.90, €9.90. So it's not free. We sell tickets for it, and that's why we have to take care of the quality of the streaming. We have our own app, and the streaming can be followed by our app. So it's very stable because there's only like one format for it. It's very stable and it's very high quality. And so I hope, I don't know yet, because it's a new format. I don't know yet if there will be tickets enough that people are buying, because to make it happen, it's quite expensive anyway, because you need a very good quality technical team for people to make it happen. But let's see. But I mean, in jazz field, live show is and will always be the main issue, I think.
I'd like to put in a couple of comments. Can I put in just a couple comments, just quickly?
Sure.
I think that the nature of the industry and the way that it's changing is that the audience doesn't just. I agree with Annamaija. The thing about the music that we work with, mainly jazz, is improvisational, and I've always maintained that the size of the audience we have. You don't get the same audience size that you do for a Beyonce, but we get it back in loyalty, because the show is always going to be different. And so you have a very loyal and dedicated following, as opposed to having a large following. So you have people who follow artists over a real long arc of their career, which is in pop, whereas in pop and rock music, the trends change so quickly that, it isn't the same kind of an experience. But what I was going to say is I think that there has been a trend where people don't want to just go to a show anymore, no matter what kind of show it is. They're trying to find ways, because they have so many platforms to get content. They're trying to find more ways to connect with musicians, to feel that they're closer to the musicians, to feel like they're getting like the inside track or a little extra. So I think the streaming has an opportunity for an artist, if they can be creative and think about it from this perspective, of a way that they can share their creative process more. And I think that brings an extra value that they can't get just at a live show. Or they can get some of it at a live show. Certainly some people have better stage presence than others. But the artists that can transcend being able to perform in an intimate way without having to depend on the input of the audience, I think are the ones that are most effective. And I also believe that the quality of the content, the quality of the sound has to be very good, because people just don't, it's hard enough to get people to watch a screen. Then if it's not engaging and they don't feel that the sound is good enough, it's going to make people go away. The other thing I would like to say is, when streaming came into this, and I'd like to hear Mike's opinion on this, or anybody's opinion on this. When streaming came in and people started consuming music more on like one track instead of buying a whole record, I think you saw a big shift from people buying CDs to getting a lot of content online. And my question is, as we move forward out of this crisis, is there going to be more of a shift towards consuming music from a streaming platform? And how is that going to develop so that it actually does become a really interesting resource for people? That's my question.
Okay, yeah, that's a very good point. Mike, do you want to pick up on that? Streaming, downloading, etc.
Well, if you look at the statistics during the COVID times, or during the lockdown period, the worldwide lockdown period, streaming has gone up. And I agree with Katherine that artists need to be entrepreneurial and creative enough to find ways to, fill in what is engagement online, and what does that mean, and what is my value online. That's also a very good discussion to have. I do feel that there will be a development towards more online concerts, but it will not take it away from the live experience to somehow. And it will, and the engagement part between the fan versus the artist will also be slightly different than before Corona times, I believe. It will not be any more than, of course they want engagement in the sense they want exclusive content, they want something extra from the artist, they want to feel very personally engaged with that artist as well. But I also believe that, I don't know, I think there will be something extra. I'm not sure what that is. What that extra will be. Well, Edin, what do you think?
Nobody knows. That's the thing. Yeah. Nobody knows. We're all in this period of uncertainty. A question from the audience, from an audience member, from Kenneth Killeen, and he says, "Do audiences actually want stream shows? Is there a demand?"
Yeah, I think that's a good question.
Any of you experience demand?
That brings us actually to, I believe, on the point of the streaming as a, let's call it, new platform in this circumstances. But I think that streaming is just there to compensate what we're losing in this situation, but it's not going to be a right thing for us, because don't forget, we're doing live performances, we're doing live shows. This is what we do. And it's not just about music. It's about communities. It's about meeting people. It's about hang after the show. It's so many. There are so many social aspects of the live performances that,
and economic aspects. I mean, it's also
of
economic.
Course, that comes without saying.
You can't sustain a whole ecosystem with it.
Yeah, but the point is that when we're thinking and rethinking our new normal, we should be aware of what we do and what we stand for, what kind of music and what kind of everything must. We have to remember all of that, because in this process of making things possible again, reopening and try to continue at least and pick up the pieces and try to rebuild new reality for us. I think that we should not forget why we're doing this and what it matters most. And And I think that's just thinking about how we can do live music. And if you're really doing the shows, and if you don't have enough audience because it's restrictions or some other reasons, if we can add more audiences by streaming for already which is already happening, that's one thing. But if you're thinking about streaming as a platform and a medium to consume music instead of live performances, we have completely different context. And like Kenneth asked, I'm not sure how much audience and how many audiences and for how long is going to be interested, and especially are they most of them are really want streaming shows, because we have CDs, we have already recorded music, and we have already kind of possibility of that experience. So I believe that the streaming it's here to compensate and to give extra possibilities for the extra content, but that we should focus on how we can make live shows possible again, and how we can preserve the position of the musician, which is the guy who owns the thing. Because I believe that live performances was like for 100 years already was the last I can say refuge for the artist, they can really be connected with their product. Meaning if somebody take away from the artist's live performances, there is actually nothing which is in control of the artist anymore. And because streaming, it's as we know that how much artists in the end getting paid for that doesn't make anything, you know. I mean, it can give some, but it's not fair. It's far to be fair. No. Far from fair. So when we're talking about streaming, are we thinking that right now about next level of exploitation of the musicians in the name of their goodness, of their I would say benefits? I'm not sure how much musicians will, on long term, will benefit for the streaming, because that's not going to be under their control. The thing is that we should go back on our basic idea, making live music possible, and how we can get best for the musicians in this new context, because we are promoters, and independent promoters are dying immediately with musicians, like agents as well. So it's like 80% of the industry dies immediately together. That's the problem. And to go back on the Kenneth question, I want to see the survey actually, how much and how many audiences really want to watch and listen the streaming shows. We think a lot of different things, but we really don't know. Yeah.
The other point that raises as well is how the media engages with streaming. How, as a journalist, you actually experience something which is essentially abstract. You're looking at a screen. You're not in a venue. You're not part of a physical experience as you had it in a club. So there's a question here from Citizen Jazz, who wants to know, how do you write about a streaming concert? Because you're not there with the musicians. You don't have the atmosphere. You can't pick up the vibes, etc. And also, for a photographer, what can a photographer do when it comes to a concert that's being streamed? So, can you address that, guys? Whoever wants to come in.
I mean, I'm sorry. Maybe my sound is a bit different. I had some issues here. I just wanted to flip back to what Edin said. I think it's very important that we, as a community, try to focus on artist-centric thinking. So that we focus a lot on, if there's one thing that was very clear from this crisis, is the fragility of our industry. That's one, and the second one is also the lack of development of your own artist communities. And these own artist communities have been neglected, at least in Holland, for so long. In where the markets are kind of crooked, promoters, and obviously, I'm part of that. Promoters pay decent fees and pay quite some money for especially American artists or foreign artists, but they lack the investment or the same market thinking to invest in their own music communities. So if you change the subject from the industry perspective, let's talk about the artist perspective. What's going to happen to our artists? What's going to happen to our musicians? And as everything is now kind of burned to the ground, it's, I think, our responsibility to nurture that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If I can add just one thing, talking about
That's an
artists.
interesting point, Mike, because as I said at the beginning in my introduction, you're all international professionals. You work across continents, and we've been working across borders. So the situation, as Mike described it, with things grinding to a halt, does that mean that the emphasis on local artists, that the focus on local artists has to increase as a result?
If I can say something on that,
Go
I
ahead.
believe that it's a logical, it's very important, and it's a necessity. But we don't have to think just locally, and we have to maintain international aspect of this music. We really have to try to maintain international aspect, because if we close ourselves in the local scene, we don't doing a really favor on long term, even to us, even not either for the local scene. And I believe that we have to find a way, especially in Europe. It's much easier than if you talk like broader concept of the overseas shows, etc. The thing is that in Europe, thanks to the many advantages that Europe has as a market, I think there are possibilities to maintain international level of the music and of the shows we present, thanks to the fact that European countries are well connected and regionally can be organized all kinds of tourings in terms of maintaining a situation we have now. Staying like in Europe Jazz Network, we have a program called the Take a Green Train. And then finally, it's like the best moment to think about that again, because if you use the trains inside of Europe, we can organize tours in any way we want, without flights, without and stay green, and also regionally, it's very well connected and already organized. That's infrastructure we have maybe to rely upon more than ever. And also maybe thinking of the long-term booking. It's not the only way to think about things under these circumstances, and we can think about short notice booking, like we have a situation and we are sure there's going to be next 30 or 40 or 60 days, and we can announce, I'm just saying as an idea, we can announce like a short notice booking. For example, we have a French band touring Italy, Switzerland, Germany, and Austria for the 2 weeks in 60 days, like from now. So
essentially being more flexible, Edin?
Yeah, more flexible. We have to rethink about all formats for new future and for new normal. So the meaning that why we should always thinking about, okay, we cannot do 2020. Let's try to maintain same days for the next year. That's fine. That's obvious. That's a good thing to do. But meanwhile, maybe we can work on different level, but still maintain international aspect of what we do. Of course, we have to maintain the local scene and reinvest our attention, our energy, and funds to support local scene, because it's like a matter of life and death. So we are responsible for the local scene. And but other than that, we should really try to maintain international level, that we stay on international level, because this music belongs to the this international art form. It's not something else. So the thing is that in Europe, we have advantages to use already existing platform or good practices of organizing tours regionally, etc., and make more shows for the musicians and somehow maybe better overcome what we have now. Trains.
Katherine, can you react to that?
We should believe in trains.
Well, I don't know if you guys are aware, but I got kicked out of the call for about 5 minutes. So you need to. I can respond to a couple of things that these guys said, but can you tell me what the original question was?
Well, I think that point that Edin made about, because Mike was talking about the focus on local artists, the fact that they shouldn't be left behind, and then we changed a little bit, and Edin was talking about the fact that this is an international music and we need to do whatever we can to maintain that international network of musicians. So from your point of view, as somebody in America who's worked extensively across borders, can you see a way forward? How can we actually fulfill all of these criteria and maybe make sure that we focus on the local, but also maintain the international as well?
You know, I think this is the same thing I've been talking about for as long as I've been working in Europe. I think this comes to a couple of different points. I mean, I remember back in the late 80s, and I've said this, and it's controversial, I realize it, but back in the late 80s, when I started working for this company, IMN, and so it wasn't even IMN then, even in the early 90s, you know, the Europeans really wanted to have an American artist in their festival in order to bring it legitimacy, and particularly if they had a Black artist, because this was felt to give it a lot more authenticity. But I think, you know, certainly it's stating the obvious that the European jazz scene has grown up on its own over all these years. So you don't have to have an American artist on your festival for it to be a jazz festival. I mean, of course, Herbie Hancock and the legends, Wayne Shorter, all those people, there's only one of them. But I think it goes to the fact that even before COVID-19, with the collapse of the record industry, the competition to tour in Europe is fierce. It's the only way artists are making money. So I think the combination of that and COVID-19 is going to cause two things to happen, I hope. First of all, it's going to cause musicians and managers to understand the music business a little bit better and understand the business of music, business, and what you have to do to have a sustainable model. That's number one. So it isn't, and the other thing is partnership. And this is what I always talk about. You have to work in partnership with this kind of music. It's not, the artist shouldn't be taking, from my perspective, taking, you know, trying to squeeze every last dollar out of a deal so that it raises the risk for a promoter and they can't make any money. You have to work in partnership with each other in order to move, to be able to support the music. I think that's really important. So I think the changes that can happen is that people start to understand that there is money involved here. And depending on how many tickets people can sell, that's how much money you can make out of the deal. And when you force people to have to pay more money, unless there's a sponsor or they've got money from the government, if it's a soft ticket situation, it's a different matter. But if it's a hard ticket situation and you're trying to build your market profile, you have to get real about what's possible here. I think it's really important. And I think we have to break down the idea that American jazz is better than European jazz. Jazz belongs to everybody. It doesn't matter. Just because classical music is primarily a Western European tradition, does it mean that we can't play classical music? I mean, I think music should be, it should be open to everybody, and I think we have to respect that. Yeah. I don't know if that answered the question, but I feel very passionate about this stuff.
Yeah, I can tell that. I mean, this whole question of the place of the American artist at a jazz festival in Europe is obviously, you know, something which is important to discuss. And I do think that the legitimacy of European artists as well is something which is well established now. So I think, you know, certainly from my point of view as a journalist and somebody who's been lucky enough to attend festivals in Europe and in America as well, I think the key thing is that there's a certain identity that a festival has, where you feel that the artistic directors and the musicians are really doing whatever they can to present the best possible music at the highest,
exactly,
which maybe goes beyond the question of nationality or where you're from or what your particular history might be. So I think that was a point well made, Katherine. Annamaija, can you pick up on that as well? I think this whole idea of, you know, how we can go forward with partnerships and collaborations. I mean, that partnership and collaborations have been going on for a long time, and I think to the benefit of everybody. But are we at a stage now where it really, really has to be about people pulling together in these very difficult circumstances so that everybody can hopefully survive?
Yes, as I told you earlier, my venue is owned by Musicians Union, so it's owned by the musicians. And I really believe in unions. I'm a unionist in all perspectives, and I really believe in collaboration. But on the other hand, living in a country like Finland that is very isolated from the Central Europe, I love take the green train idea, but there's no train tracks to my country, so you have to take a boat or fly to get there. You know, we are waiting for a tunnel from Helsinki to Tallinn, the train.
It's
but
great.
we don't have train tracks up here until up here from Central Europe. So of course
we do have, but leads nowhere.
This situation gives a very strong feeling of isolation up here, because I really love being in contact with other European countries, but at this point it's not possible because there's almost no flight connections either. So we are very isolated now. But the whole idea of having Livelab project is to make our national collaboration, to create a national collaboration. And so far we are collaborating with Helsinki Livelab when we are booking bands abroad, and also with a couple of other venues in Finland to make more sustainable tours for bands when they are coming over, because unfortunately at this point we can't do it without flying. It would take too long time. It would not be possible for the artists.
Right.
And there have been some questions in the chat regarding streaming, and I think that streaming can be some kind of I love live concerts. I'm running a venue. I'm very dependent of live shows, but streaming can be also part of your international career as an artist in this situation where you can't travel that much because of the lockdowns, and maybe the prices of the flights can get very, very much higher after this. But anyways, streaming can be somehow be your way to connect your fans and your audiences abroad. Also, after all this mess, I think, because it's also sustainable. It's not only about it's more sustainable for many reasons. And for me as a venue organizer, I would love to collaborate with other venues with live band in my venue and streamed band, another like international streamed band in the same night, so that the other venue could have the other way around, you know, a local band plus our band streamed. So that kind of like new collaborations between venues can be created when we have platforms like EJN, and also willing to work on the careers of the musicians.
Okay, so possible models for the future there. There's an interesting comment which I think we should address. It's from Sarah da Costa Shepherd. One of the clauses in many festivals contracts prohibits the artist playing within a ratio of sometimes up to 100 miles, 3 months either side of the show or more, sometimes even in that same country the same year. Isn't it time for that clause to be removed in order to stimulate smaller national venues in the scene, reducing the carbon footprint at the same time? Can you react to that, folks?
Yeah,
I totally agree. It's ridiculous, you know.
Yeah.
It's that should be changed for sure.
I believe, if I can say something, I believe that applies on the high-profile, very expensive artists, and it doesn't apply to everything, to every single show. I don't believe that if you have some hardcore impro band, I don't believe that they will be against the show in the next city, you know, like no problem with that. I think that's ridiculous in our context for sure, and shouldn't be there at all, because now we are coming into the phase which we will have a situation that musicians play actually more, and but travel less, and play more gigs than usually, and maybe in smaller places. Maybe because now if you have a venue which is 700, maybe you can let only 300 people because of restrictions, this or that. So that means that everything will change, because this is all this entire crisis is actually a big reset. And it's all about how we're going to reset and what's going to be when we finish reset. But nothing can. I don't see that anything will stay the same in terms of the fees for the musicians, in terms of travel, because you can compensate fees with less money invested in travels. And that helps actually idea to take a train when possible, of course, Annamaija. I have also the train in my country, but I cannot travel anywhere with trains, like only, very simple, but not connected at all. So what I'm talking about, European Union, there is something called European Union, and it's very well organized inside of continent or on the territory of the continent, or in some regions. That's even better. I mean, it's always possible to have a Benelux tour of the one week for any musician, to play small venues etc. And then Italy and France. I'm thinking that we have to find a way how to go back on that and try to restart what we were doing before. And I think that Europe will be focused on Europe for some time, and I think that's not matter of debate. But it's going to be like that because of obvious reasons, and we don't know when Americans can be able to travel to Europe, etc. And we don't know what's going to happen in the 2 months. Who knows, And there are so many questions and so many uncertainties that we really have to think locally, but in terms of Europe, there'll be a European local way of thinking, and try to reorganize and rebuild networks and all connections, and rethink possible way of touring for the future, and be ready when entire world opens up, and then when we Americans they can already use the exercised infrastructure, so to speak, something which already worked for some period of time, so they can really jump into our green train with the touring. Yeah.
Can I ask a simple question to the people who are promoters? All three of you. Does some of that become more possible if the promoters collaborate with each other and charge pretty close to the same ticket price? Then you could go see. I mean, that's always the competition, right? There's the market competition in terms of you all advertising shows that are in the same area or relatively close to each other. But if it's also a question, if you can go see the band at the same ticket price, even though you're 75 kilometers away from each other, would that make a difference?
It just depends, Katherine. I mean, if I look at Holland, which is a very small area, the ticket differences, for example, in Rotterdam versus Amsterdam, which is only 50 kilometers apart, is already there. It just depends on the demography of the city, the demography of the market. It depends on the stability of the market, on a whole bunch of factors. But circling back to your question, Katherine, but also to what Edin said, I think we should let go of the competition model. We should go more for the cooperation model, and cooperate more. I mean, it's the same with exclusivity clauses. Of course, every festival or venue has their exclusivity clause, but it's always negotiable. It's always negotiable to say, it doesn't make sense for a smaller artist, or even for a mid-tier or even a bigger artist. So all these little things, like Edin said, it just has to change, and we need to reinvent a whole bunch of things. I saw a comment here in the chat also about block bookings. Yes, if there is a train connection between London, Paris, Brussels, Rotterdam, Amsterdam, and going up north, Groningen, Hamburg, Berlin, etc. If there's a practical train pass, for example, for artists, or venues actually collaborate together without just talking, but also invest in making sure that those touring expenses for the artists go down. If there's concrete deals with hotels or accommodations to be made, then the touring expenses will go down for us, and then it would be much easier for Katherine and me to actually get artists back into Europe.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree totally. Yeah, this is a way to go. That's what I'm saying. We have to reorganize ourselves in, and also thinking about, like during the lockdown and COVID-19 crisis, which is still going on actually. The solidarity, because it's already one comment which was made. The solidarity is a thing. It's our thing, and I think we should not find ourselves and feel like we are blocked. We're waiting. We don't have to wait for the government for this or that, and we can do something ourselves. And thinking in terms of solidarity and community, which is all about actually. Even at every single show, it's a community event at first place.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
and if you think that way, we will definitely come to this point when we were talking actually all day, and then which Mike just said, that we work regionally. We try to do block bookings, and maybe agents will receive the block offers, not anymore like a single shows. But look, okay, we have 5 shows, we have 5 clubs, 5 small concert places, whatever. And we come up with the idea for September. How about that? We're going to give you 5 shows. So that could be a way, and which is still going on all over Europe. But I think
we've been doing that for years.
Yeah, of course. But
Yeah.
now when you simply cannot include, for example, for some times, maybe, we don't know, or because of the prices, there is no point to include travels by plane. And I think there are many possibilities after this crisis. And during this crisis, this is always opportunity to take advantage, so to speak, of the crisis and try to rethink the models we already used and what we can improve. It's about reform and try to improve the system in order to survive. So we have
revolution. It's about revolution.
Yeah, revolution. I didn't want to go that far, but I'm really thinking about it.
Great.
So the general flow of the conversation is very much about partnerships, collaboration, maybe people pooling their resources, rethinking perhaps in a less competitive way, making sure that there's more collaboration so that people across borders can help each other to negotiate the crisis as best as possible. Is that roughly how everybody's feeling at the moment? Is there a consensus on that there needs to be more collective thinking?
I think so. Yeah.
There's a very interesting development which we had here in Holland to be a much more stronger force politically, to create some more political leverage in negotiating emergency packages for the live music sector. So we came together with 7 independent agencies here in Holland, and we formed a new company called United Independent Music Agencies, which is not really based on business, on booking artists or whatever, but just to create political leverage, but also to be kind of I don't know, more or less like a union 2.0, 2020 type formation in which, there's more collaboration, there's more sharing of information, there's more, I don't know, more cooperative thought. And I think that, that's the way to go.
Yeah.
We're running out of time. Yeah, I think that solidarity is a key word. Annamaija, I think I might leave the last word to you because we haven't heard you for a while. Can you just pick up on this general idea of maybe people coming together at this time and pooling our resources, creating some greater solidarity so that we can negotiate the crisis together?
Yes. What I would like to say here is to answer to the question that is in the chat regarding how can a venue or a festival survive financially if it can only sell 50% of capacity, etc. So we have to collaborate more. Collaboration is also answer to that, because as you know, when you have like block bookings, for example, you can your costs are going down, but also streaming is, I feel streaming could be one kind of like new way of getting income to get more, to get more audience in within the stream when you can't sell that many tickets. But of course, unfortunately, I have a feeling that some venues will collapse because of this. So that is also something that will happen. We will have less venues. Some of them can't survive. But we have to collaborate and find new ways of doing our business. And it's a big challenge, but it's also an interesting challenge for me. I'm very positive and optimistic myself in the situation we have.
Okay. Well, I see that Mike has brought the next generation of international agents
Definitely.
to the discussion.
They're going to change the world.
So that very much gives us.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike, for giving us this vision of the future. We're just about out of time, everybody. Thank you so much for your contributions. It's been really wonderful to have this discussion with you. So thank you, Katherine.
Thank you.
Edin.
Yeah.
Mike.
Thank you, guys.
And Annamaija. Thank you so much. Let me just say for everybody who's tuned in, the next EJN webinar, number 8, Someone to Watch Over Me, in collaboration with Puglia Sounds, which is all about how concerts will be economically sustainable in a period of global recession. It's obviously following on from the conversation today. What are the possible scenarios for fundraising and sponsorship, ideas for business models, etc.? Again, very, very current and very important to discuss. That is going to take place on Thursday, the 11th of June at 5 o'clock CEST with Nicole Newman, Jean-Yves Cavin, Miguel Martin, Corrado Beldi, and it will be moderated by Michelle Kuipers. So thanks once again, everybody, for taking part. And thanks, everybody who followed us on Facebook, for your questions and input as well. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys. Thank you, Kevin.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
See you. See you guys.
See you guys.